This is Fight Fans Radio.
Let's get ready to rumble! Oh, my God! Unbelievable! Down goes Frazier! Down goes
Frazier! It's time! You're listening to New Mexico's only mixed martial arts and boxing podcast, The Low Blow, on AdamCombatSports.com and Fight Fans Radio. It is episode 178 of The Low Blow on Fight Fans Radio, USCombatSports.com, and SouthwestFight.com. I am Justin Goodjum, joined by Jorge Hernandez. What's up, man?
Good, man. How you doing? Did you finally wake up from that show that was the UFC this past weekend?
Yeah, man, I took a nap. I mean, that main event woke me up just because it was just a horrible finish. But, yeah, pretty mediocre to terrible card this past Saturday.
Is that one of the worst cards you've ever seen, or?
Nah. It was boring. I mean, it's not that big of a deal. I mean, you have boring cards here or there, but that's going to happen from time to time. But I think the UFC's put on some pretty good shows, so they have a bad one here or there. It's not that big of a deal. But today, man, we're going to run down the UFC 169 card. We're going to break down this new, this joint venture with Top Rank, with Golden Boy, with Bellator, with the UFC, and Glory Kickboxing to really combat, really concussions, and really fund a brain study conducted by the government. So we'll discuss that. And we'll break down the latest saga with Floyd Mayweather picking an opponent. But first, Jorge, we have a guest on the line.
We do. Joining us now is a coach from one of the best gyms in the state of New Mexico, FIT NHB head wrestling coach, and also King of the Cage matchmaker. He'll be pretty busy this weekend with the King of the Cage event that's taking place here in New Mexico. Jon Judy. How you doing, Jon?
I'm doing good, man. How are you guys doing tonight?
Pretty good, man. Thanks for joining us. Now, you've probably been busy the past month and a half putting this King of the Cage show together that's going down Saturday.
I have. We've got over 17 fights on this card and got quite a bit of people involved in it. And it's been a little bit of a task putting it together. But I'll tell you what, we got an action-packed show, and I'm pretty fired up about it. I'm excited, guys.
How hard is it making a show where you mix this many different guys from different gyms and that many fights on one show? It's unheard of a lot of the times, even across the nation.
It's a little bit of a challenge. One of the things that we find in this business is oftentimes we'll book X amount of fights, and for circumstances beyond the fighter's control, beyond the control of the promoter, the matchmaker, we have things like injuries. We have people that, for one reason or another, can't get licensed. Things happen. So I've always booked shows between 15, 16, 17, knowing that some are going to fall off. We usually end up with a solid fight card of around 12, 13. Well, this time everybody stayed pretty healthy with the exception of one, and here we are. So,
how much of a surprise? I was going to say, how much of a surprise is that when you get to this point and you're like, holy crap, we got 17 fights?
Right now it's not really much of a surprise. The people that we're working with and the camps that are involved with this, it's really evolved. It's not like we just go find somebody off the streets, they jump in, and then they disappear the next day. We're working with camps who take a lot of time and a lot of pride to develop their fighters, and that shows when we're doing our shows because they're dependable. They train, they show up on weight. It makes a big difference, and that's a benefit not just to the fighters that they're involved with, but also to the organization and to the fans, because fans pay to go see people. Now, sometimes things fall apart at the last minute. That's part of the business. That's the way it goes. But when you deal with people that are dependable, that really becomes less of a concern, less of an issue, and then you have fights that the fans can appreciate, the coaches, and all the fighters do a great job in putting together.
Hi, Jon. It's Justin. King of the Cage has really had a long commitment to Albuquerque and the New Mexico area. Can you kind of go over kind of the history of King of the Cage in New Mexico? Because really we've seen other promotions kind of, now had run shows in Albuquerque and around the New Mexico area. But really King of the Cage has always been consistent in running shows, not only in Albuquerque, but around the New Mexico area.
Yeah, New Mexico's been around for quite a long time in the King of the Cage circuit. And goes back, man, as far as I can remember. I know that Tom started doing some of the matching with KOTC in about 2007, 2008. I started helping out with it come 2009, and we've been all over the state, everywhere from down in Ruidoso all the way up to Buffalo Thunder, throughout Albuquerque. There's been shows throughout the history of King of the Cage in places like Socorro, the smaller areas that are going out here west of town in Laguna. And it's really been a good opportunity for fans to see some upcoming talent. Our organization's been around the block more than one or two times, and what we've seen is our fair share of talented athletes. We've had, I think in the last 3 years, we've had almost 13 or 14 world title bouts here in the state of New Mexico. That's quite a bit. I know that I did the numbers on it not too long ago. In that time span, we've done close to 23 or 24 events in the past 3 years, and we've had almost a little bit over 200 bouts. So that's quite a bit of action for the local fighters and for some of the big names. Included on a lot of those cards have been some of the guys we see in the UFC. Guys such as, I remember Daniel Cormier came down and fought on a show down in Ruidoso not even 2.5, 3 years ago. Coached on the show. We had guys come down, Derek Cruikshank, people like that. Guys like Tim Means, who we just saw fight, I think was it last Friday that we saw him fight?
Yeah.
Fought last Friday, the main event in Legacy. Some of the other guys around the state, Donald Sanchez, Frank Baca. There's been guys from all the gyms that are involved. Quinn Mulhern, also a UFC veteran, has been on the show here. So we've got a lot of history in the state, and we've got a lot of fights going on. We tend to keep people busy, and amateurs get benefit from it as well as the professionals.
Now, what can you tell us about the main event that's happening this Saturday night in Albuquerque?
Now, I can tell you it's going to be fireworks, and I think someone's going to get knocked out. We got two guys that can strike. We got a young man that's fighting out of. Are you guys familiar with Mark Fiore up in Colorado?
Yeah, we are.
Okay.
Yep.
Mark Fiore, he's a pretty well-known coach. One of his fighters coming down, his name is David Payne, and he's a little fireball. He's an excellent striker. He's currently 1-0 as a pro. He's going to be taking on one of the locals, a guy who's got quite a few knockouts underneath him, named John Rosima out of Scott's Camp over in Judgment MMA in Rio Rancho. These guys, they like to go toe-to-toe. They're big strikers. They like to let it swing. So my prediction on that one, I don't know who. Somebody's going to go down.
What other fights do you think will stand out to the people? I know that's out of 17, and you hope that every fight is, makes everyone's night. But out of all the other ones, which one are you most looking forward to?
I think it's a toss-up on three of them, and I really can't decide. Now, I'm excited that we were able to add. We just added this week. There were a couple of injuries that had happened and a fighter drop off. We got two qualified guys that are going to be fighting. One of them's a current King of the Cage 135 amateur KOTC world champ. He's going to be fighting. His name is Robert Herrera, and he's been on fire. He ran off about 4 wins in a row, finishing all his opponents. And in the title match, he fought a fight rounded, but I believe Southwest Fight called that event the Amateur Fight of the Year. And that happened up in Cortez where he won the title. He'll be fighting Mark McGlasson from Colorado. Mark's a very talented striker. He's 4-3. I'm looking forward to that one. I'm looking forward to Charlie Williams and a young man named Andrew Vargas. Charlie out of FIT, very talented striker, very well-rounded. He's got solid wrestling, good grappling. This Andrew Vargas kid's coming up from Las Cruces, and he's a very strong wrestler. So we're going to get a chance to see Charlie go up against something he hasn't seen too often. Somebody who's got good control, pretty good grappling, he's got heavy hands, and he's a solid wrestler. So it's going to be a challenge for these two. That's going to be very fun to watch. The other one is the other pro debut. We have Dorian Dixon from here in the area that he fights out at Albuquerque BJJ as well as Rosales Kickboxing. He's going to be taking on Aaron Pearls. Now, these are two guys that have kind of raised themselves in the King of the Cage. We were fortunate enough to have them participate on our shows when they were amateurs. I think Aaron Pearls was 4-0 in our events, and he was undefeated amateur, and he fights for Tom Pless in Santa Fe. And Dorian, he's put about 7 amateur fights in. I think we've had him on about 4, maybe 5 shows. So this is something that kind of gets me excited because these are guys that we were able to see as amateurs, bring them up through the organization, get them well known in the area. Now we get to see them make their pro debut, and it's a good thing for not just us, but for them as well, and I think for the fight community, because now we can have a place where fighters can not only get their feet wet, but if they stay with it and they're dedicated and they train, they can become pro as well. So it helps out, and I think that's a good thing for the state and the MMA fighters here.
Now, Jon, also you're the wrestling coach for FIT No Holds Bar in Albuquerque, New Mexico. What is it like kind of doing double duty with, being a coach but also involved in King of the Cage? What is your time commitments like trying to balance both?
It's a lot of time. One of the things that we've chosen to do, myself, Tom, and Arlene, is this is what we do for a living. We don't do this stuff part time. There's a lot of guys out there that'll go and promote a show here and there, and they do it part time. They got their day jobs. Guys that go in and volunteer coach here and there. This is all we do. We're there full time. We're working with the event full time, and for better or for worse, we give it everything we got. So it takes up a lot of time. It takes up a lot of energy. But for me, it's worth it. It's something that I enjoy doing. Get a lot of satisfaction out of it. I've been involved with athletics since I was a kid, and being able to coach and help out when I'm able to help out is something that it means a lot to me now.
I have a question about one of your fighters out of FIT NHB, and Tim Means, who has actually been on a tear lately with Legacy. How soon? I know he's still with Legacy and might have a couple of more shows. How soon do you think we will see him in the UFC cage?
You know what? I'm not really sure what time frame we're looking at here. I do know this, is he's put in a lot of time and a lot of work, and working on not just striking, but his wrestling, his grappling, and everything involved with it. And right now, I think Tim is just focused on the task at hand and just making sure that he gets better as a fighter, that he's ready to go, and done very well with Legacy. Legacy really enjoys having him around. We enjoy being in Legacy, and if something else comes up, hey, we'll look at it as it comes. But we're not going to really kind of forecast on that. We're going to do what we need to do to make Tim a better fighter, and all that other stuff will take care of itself.
Now, the event that you guys are having this weekend is taking place at the Crown Plaza, right?
It is. It's at the Crown Plaza down there on University.
Down there at University, and doors open at 6 p.m., is that correct?
Doors are going to open at 5. First bell's going to be at
5.
6. And then tomorrow we have a public weigh-in as well at somebody who's been great for New Mexico, and that's Brian over at Sadie's. That'll be at 2 o'clock at Sadie's on 4th Street.
And the public is welcome to attend to that, right?
Absolutely.
And one more question before we let you go, just because I know Justin and I complained about it at the top of the show. What did you think about this weekend's UFC card? Did you find it as boring as we did?
You know what? Yeah, I found it pretty boring. But that being said, I think you hit it on the head. I'm not sure who said it, if it was you or Justin. You're going to have a lot of cards. You're going to have some boring ones. And, I'm in the business too, so I don't necessarily say too much when there are boring ones, because I wouldn't want to be on the end of one of them boring cards. And thankfully, I've got the fighters that have kept all of our shows exciting, and, I've been fortunate in that. So I won't give them too hard a time, but they put a lot of shows on, so that's a tall order to fill all the time.
And with 17 fights on this card, I think, there's no way that this can disappoint. So, again, you guys can get your tickets still, or even at the door there. Again, weigh-ins tomorrow at Sadie's. And the event, KOTC Rumble, takes place Saturday. Doors open at 5 p.m. there at the Crown Plaza in Albuquerque, New Mexico. John, thank you very much for coming on. We appreciate it.
You guys, thank you for having me. You guys have a good rest of the show, and look forward to seeing you guys on Saturday night.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Take care. Thank you. Bye-bye.
17 fights on the card, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's a great bang for your buck, and really you'll get to see some of the fresh talent of really MMA in general. I want to ask you, Jorge, King of the Cage really is dismissed as, a system to develop up-and-coming fighters in mixed martial arts. Why do you think that is? Because, we've seen Bellator, even though they have the TV deal, even though they have, some top 10 fighters, even when they're on ESPN to sport this, Bellator got a lot of fanfare. Certainly you've seen XFC, some other organizations really kind of surpass King of the Cage, at least in terms of just kind of name recognition. But really King of the Cage has been just around just as long as the UFC has, almost. Why do you think King of the Cage is kind of like almost taken for granted in the mixed martial arts world?
I think I'm not sure, Matt. Just because what King of the Cage reminds me of is almost like what we've seen with the XFC there regionally, and KOTC has done a good job of just building these guys, just an incredible job of building them, and for them not to take off, it just really doesn't make sense to me. It's just I think a lot of it might deal with the types of investors that they might have, or the willingness of the I guess the powers that be with the promotion of taking that next step, or of risking a little bit more and featuring this thing on a national or even international playing field. But either way, this, King of the Cage is, basically, the farm leagues, and it's been a great farm league. It's been a great AAA system, if you will, to feed these guys down the pipeline to some of these bigger shows. It's unbelievable how many names, some names that Jon did drop are that, have come from KOTC.
Yeah, I agree with you. But just, as you said, there's just so many names, and yet, it doesn't really get discussed in terms of their track record too much. It's just one of those weird things. But anyway, I forgot to mention at the top of the show, you can get in touch with Fight Fans Radio through Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Spreaker. You can get in touch with us through the Stitcher Radio app. Also, we're on Spreaker as well, and on iTunes. Right now, we have our YouTube page, which is always full of videos, youtube.com/lowblow505. And I believe, Jorge, there's some videos from about 2 weeks ago from the Buffalo Thunder boxing event, right?
Yeah, there's some post-fight interviews with Tony Valdez and also Brandon Holmes. Brandon Holmes, quickly becoming one of the names to look for here in New Mexico boxing. So make sure you guys check those out and support those guys.
And of course, the Bob Foster Some of That video is already on there as well. And of course, it's Black History Month, as we said last week. So a lot of the audio from our Bob Foster interview, along with our Austin Trout interview, will be coming up on the Stitcher Radio app and on Podomatic. So be looking out for that. So, man, let's get into 2 rounds just real quickly. Anything that's catching your eye? It's myself and Jorge discussing the biggest topics in combat sports. Pretty slow going this month. Really, anything that's really making you upset or caught your interest this week?
I think we might touch base on this later, or maybe we can talk about this now. But the whole catch weight issue that people brought up, and I think we talked about it, we touched base on it a little bit in, I guess, MMA or specifically the UFC. So basically, what Dana White is saying is that if Jose Aldo decided to move up to 155, in boxing, thankfully, people can rely on that belt still being there. Even if they move up a weight class, they can always come back down and still defend that other title. Sounds like Jose Aldo doesn't have that chance at all. So the guys will not meet at a catch weight. If the fight goes down, Aldo wants to get paid, and it's taking place at 155 if Dana White has anything to do with it, and he obviously does. So just interesting to me how, it's an approach that boxing should take. If you leave the weight class to challenge for another one, you should have to vacate the title in boxing. As far as I'm concerned, you do risk that to go challenge yourself and move up. So for the UFC, especially because there's only one belt, I can see why Dana is more adamant about, you go up and challenge, you're leaving that title. So pretty interesting to me how, the two sports actually differ between that. And it's obviously because there's one belt to defend in the UFC.
Yeah, it's just bizarre because Jose Aldo, he's the one that's having trouble cutting weight. So he should be the one in favor of this. I understand he wants to be champion, but the weight cut's been brutal for him. And quite honestly, we'll talk about this, later. He hasn't really looked that good in his fights. I wouldn't say. I'll take that back. He's looked good. He's the champion. He's dominated his opponents, but we haven't seen the explosive killer Jose Aldo in his fights lately. And I think it has a lot to do with that weight cut. That's killer. We've seen him fade in later rounds. We've seen other fighters really take advantage of him. And really, the only reason why no one's really kind of exploited that. One guy he came close was Frankie Edgar, but guys are pretty much intimidated until he gets kind of tired in the 4th or 5th round. So, yeah, the catch weight thing, I agree with you. Pride was notorious for this with Vanderlei Silva. He would move up in weight and get destroyed in the heavyweight division and still move down to the light heavyweight division and still be the champion. He was considered one of the longest reigning champions in Pride history, but he still lost fights. You've seen in Pride also with Takanori Gomi, he would take fights non-title. But that's always would draw the ire of hardcore MMA fans. So, yeah, I agree with you, Jorge. This is a good system. Just Jose Aldo move up in weight. If he loses, you have a nice attraction for him returning to the 145-pound division and challenging the champion there. I guess my real quickly 2-round segment is on the reality show that Dana White's produced on the Discovery Channel, just canceled after one episode called The Fighters. We discussed this, I believe, a couple of weeks ago. Basically, the series was surrounding a boxing gym in Boston, kind of like The Contender. there's been rumors. I think it's even been confirmed that the show's been canceled after one episode. From what the ratings were showing, I guess the show did not do that well. And I guess, to me, this seems weird. Again, I said this a couple of weeks ago. Dana White just kind of doing this other project, even though he's involved with the UFC. I mean, he talks about it all the time. He operates on no sleep. He's just so busy with the UFC. I mean, there's a lot going on this year with, no George St. Pierre, no Anderson Silva, really working the details out on this new Fox Sports deal. All your international partners, the UFC Fight Pass, and to really focus on a reality series about boxing just seems completely bizarre. So with this show completely, I mean, I tried to look for this show. It was just hard to find. I tried looking for this show on the Discovery website. It was trouble to really find it on there. So the show wasn't really promoted completely well, and maybe that contributed to why it was canceled after one episode.
No, that's really strange. You just wonder how much they even had invested. You have a lot of these networks that will spend money on these. They'll drop tons of money on production, and then when they don't see any return, instead of keep spending on the production, they decide just to cut their, just to take their losses as they are instead of investing more into something that's not going to develop. And it seems like this was the case for this. It just seems like just a really awkward time for this type of, show to come about, and especially on such an odd network, don't you think?
Yeah, it was just weird. Why Discovery Channel? I mean, granted, as I said a couple of weeks ago, SmackDown, the wrestling show, is on Sci-Fi, but they already have a built-in audience who's conditioned to tune in every week, no matter what channel it's on. With this Fighters show, I mean, UFC fans, it wasn't like the show was promoted on the UFC pay-per-views, to my knowledge. I mean, if you're an MMA fan, you don't know the show really existed unless you follow it, on the underground or go to the websites every week. And even then, this show might not really appeal to you. So, yeah, it is bizarre. Maybe it'll survive on the internet. Maybe it'll be a bonus on the Fight Pass. I don't really know, but pretty bizarre stuff. So, man, 3 topics. We're just going to run them down. Before we get to UFC 169, it wasn't a great card, so we're going to save that for a little bit later on. But I want to ask you, Jorge, there's been a lot of chatter going on with Floyd Mayweather's next fight. And right now on Twitter, I'm seeing Manny Pacquiao in Times Square. I saw a picture with him taken with Carmelo Anthony, in Madison Square Garden. No matter how much we discuss how boxing is doing well and how 2013 was an amazing year, all the mainstream wants to talk about is Floyd Mayweather versus Manny Pacquiao. And now it seems like Mayweather's next opponent is really lining up to be either Marcus Maidana or Amir Khan. We've been kind of discussing this, man. What is really left for Floyd Mayweather to do in the sport? I mean, he's pretty much the best technical boxer of this generation. He's undefeated. I mean, really, in terms of a box office attraction, that's Mayweather. That's him in itself. I mean, the worst he can do is, 800,000 buys? That's a disappointment. Other promotions would kill to have those type of numbers. So what's really left for Mayweather? I mean, really, is it a Maidana fight? I mean, is that going to really motivate him? I mean, let alone fighting Amir Khan. I mean, what is Mayweather's intentions here in the sport?
It's just to finish up that Showtime contract and stay undefeated. I mean, that's primarily it. It's not going to be to face Manny Pacquiao. That's what Mayweather's, I guess, biggest downfall in his career is. Mayweather has prevented himself from being one of the top 3 greatest fighters of all time just because he hasn't fought Maidana. To me, he stays out of just because he didn't fight, he's not going to fight Manny Pacquiao. To me, once his career done, I'd have him probably top 5, maybe 5th, 6th, 7th, around that part all time. But because he did not face Manny Pacquiao in Manny Pacquiao's prime, I guess technically you could kind of say that Floyd Mayweather is still in his prime. I think it's going to hurt Mayweather's legacy. It's not going to hurt it with regards to, people not thinking that he wasn't going to be Pacquiao or didn't stand a chance against him. Personally, I think he would have pulled off a close decision against Pacquiao, but that would be it because all the other greats fought their counterpart. You hear of guys, of contemporaries, and whether it be art, whether it be music or whatever it might be. But in sports, it's the only time where people can actually face off and duel to see who's better. And in this case, it definitely hurt him because if you think about it, which out of the guys that he has beaten, who's going to go down as an all-time great? A handful of them are, right? Canelo probably, Miguel Cotto, Juan Manuel Marquez, De La Hoya, definitely De La Hoya. So De La Hoya is the best guy that he ever faced, but everyone knows he faced an older Oscar De La Hoya, and it does hurt him a little bit, especially since he barely won that by a split decision. So
correct. Yeah.
For him not to fight Pacquiao, a guy in his prime, one of the all-time greats, Pacquiao will probably be top 20, 25 when it's all said and done. I think that's what definitely hurt him, and for him, it's finishing this contract, Jay. I mean, it was a huge contract that was signed. People were shocked that it was with Showtime. So that's primarily his goal. I mean, who else could he fight out there that'll have people say, oh, you know what, now that puts him as all-time great status. He's already an all-time great, but there's not one person out there, not Khan, not Maidana, not Erislandy Lara. There's no one out there that would put him there unless he risks moving up to, let's say, 160 pounds. But there's no reason for him to do that because no one expects him to perform well at that weight against a guy like Gennady Golovkin. There's no way anyone expects that. So, I mean, ultimately, Floyd ended up hurting his legacy to be the greatest fighter of all time, I think, by not taking that fight.
Well, Mayweather has such a huge ego, and coupled with that he's a huge boxing historian, I think he has a warped sense of boxing history. So I don't think he cares what anybody says. And I'll give Mayweather credit. I mean, he is a boxing encyclopedia. He's extremely smart.
Yep.
I don't think people really give that to him in terms of talking to him. I mean, really, a lot of boxers. I mean, this is something compared to like really MMA fighters we haven't really seen yet. But you see Mike Tyson. I mean, a really smart guy. Zab Judah, Bernard Hopkins. These guys study the sport of boxing. These guys aren't just they're going to watch their fights and they're done. With the sport. These guys, they're fans, and they're respectful of the sport. And so with Mayweather, I don't think he really cares what anybody else has to say because in his mind, if you have an opinion about boxing, he knows more than you do. So what right do you have in saying his legacy is damaged by not fighting Pacquiao? So that's why I think that fight's never going to happen. And I do think he's kind of scared of him for some reason. I don't really know why. I mean, honestly, I think he has the defensive skills to, especially now, to really outbox Pacquiao. I don't think the fight would be close. I changed my mind. I think I gave Pacquiao an edge, 2 years ago. I think now, it would be a relatively easy fight for Floyd Mayweather, to be honest with you. I just don't know why he's in fear of fighting this guy. I have no idea.
And I think his hatred for Bob Arum is that big also.
True. That's a lot to do with it.
I mean, I think that is 60% of all this.
Sure.
If he could get over that, and I think the rest of it is just he's reluctant to fight him just because he might be, this is the only guy that can truly, really end that aura that that he has around him. But,
yeah,
people recollect, like hardcore boxing fans know that Mayweather probably has one loss, and that was a close fight against Jose Luis Castillo back in 2002. But history, I mean, we'll probably forget about that, man.
Oh, yeah, of course. Oh, yeah. So, man, let's get to this card, UFC 169. Real quickly, I don't think it's a train wreck, as people said it was. 10 decisions, not good. But, fights are boring here or there. And really, this card I wasn't expecting too much. I would say this, Abel Trujillo versus Jamie Varner. What an incredible fight that was. Unbelievable fight of the night. Trujillo coming back with just a huge counter to put down Jamie Varner. Really an unbelievable fight there. But really, other than that, not a eventful card. I guess let's talk about the main event. Renan Barão, Uriah Faber for the bantamweight title. Of course, Dominic Cruz had to pull out of this fight. You see Renan Barão really rock Uriah Faber. Faber on wobbly legs, tried to regain his footing. Both ended up on the ground. Barão really tried to overwhelm Faber with punches. You can clearly see on the replay, Faber with his thumbs up. I guess Herb Dean didn't see that, but it's weird because you take a look at the angle, unless I'm not remembering this correct. From the angle I saw, it seemed like Herb Dean could see him just fine. So I don't understand why he didn't see Faber's thumbs up, but a premature stoppage. A lot of fans are saying round 1, 342 TKO. Renan Barão retains the bantamweight title. I as we discussed earlier, Jorge, I think we're all in agreement that Herb Dean just made a wrong call here. If you were to get into Herb Dean's mind, I know that's kind of a weird question, but can you understand his perspective of possibly, Uriah Faber was hurt, Faber looked damaged by Renan Barão. Now, granted, the punches weren't that hard, but Faber, you want to save him from himself. Can you really understand Herb Dean's point of view here, playing devil's advocate, or do you think there's no excuse? This is to say bad stoppage all around.
You hate to say that he did a bad job just because he's such a great referee in my mind. But, I mean, just the positioning. I can't – we were talking about this before the show started. I can't remember hearing him ask Uriah if he was okay. And if he did, Uriah was giving him a thumbs up with the other hand. So it was probably – it may have been fault of Uriah Faber as well for not voicing something, for actually saying something. If he was not that hurt, then he could have actually – uttered some words to make, to let the referee know that he was okay. But it was a combination of Uriah getting rocked in the series right before that, and then, just bad positioning by of course, the ref, by Herb Dean. And I don't know, it's just, if you can say something, say something. Don't think that the referee can see what you're doing with your hands, because sometimes that can be, even hand signals can be misinterpreted. So I think Uriah has a little bit of fault in this, but Herb Dean, I think, has most of the fault. Just because even those punches that Renan Barão were probably at 40% strength, and they were hitting Uriah's glove. So they were not effective blows at all. Yeah, they probably, caused some sort of damage just because, you're hitting a guy near his head. But, I mean, nowhere near enough to stop this fight, I don't think.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I will take it a step further. I mean, more than just voicing it, how about moving? I mean, he kind of stood there in a stationary position. If he just even moved towards his back or just, did some kind of offensive movement, I think Herb Dean, I don't think he would have stopped the fight. Now, the question is, if he were to, go onto his back, would he have stopped it there? But to me, that would have been more of an egregious stop, just because then, I mean, he would have pulled into Uriah Faber's guard, and for sure that'd be an insane stoppage. So I think Faber's at fault a little bit, but I think this is a bad stoppage for Herb Dean. And I think really, this is what we've discussed earlier, Jorge. It's just the sport being so subjective that each ref has their own kind of code of when they should stop the fight, what's their opinion of when they should step in and when they shouldn't. I mean, it's not uniform. There's no really written rule as to, okay, the guy's on all fours taking punishment, stop it now. Like, there's nothing in the rule book that says that. So it's just difficult when each ref has their own code of kind of conduct, and it's difficult for the fighters to really get a beat on what rights do they have in terms of how much punishment they can take and what they can't. It's just kind of tough.
And you know what, Jay? This just reminded me of what they do in boxing. In boxing, they show the on a major pay-per-view bout, before the main event, they show on camera, that way the public watching can hear the rules as they're being expressed and told and explained to each fighter. You'll see, let's see, Kenny Bayless in Manny Pacquiao's locker room. You'll see him a little bit later in Brandon Rios' locker room, telling him the rules, letting him know what he's looking for. And, it'd be interesting if the UFC did something like that. I know it's not part of their production, but I wonder what that conversation was in the locker room, where Herb Dean or any other maybe member of the commission may have been explaining the rules to the fighters. And do they even get that detailed? Hey, if you're okay, give me a verbal or give me a thumbs up.
Well, it's interesting.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say it should be one or the other, or it can be both. I mean, I don't see a problem with it being both. So it just really depends on how it's explained to the guys before the fight, or what the rules even are for each individual state.
Sure. Well, you see with funny you bring that up with the UFC, and they do on the video blog. You see that all the time, especially with John McCarthy. He's notorious for this. Like, you always see John McCarthy explain, if you're hurt, I'm going to stop it here. He's very specific. You don't see really – I've only seen John McCarthy really go into detail. I'm sure the other refs do the same, but the only video I've seen really in specifics is John McCarthy, and that's usually on the video blog. So that's something easily the UFC can do. They already do it with the video blog. Why not put it on television? I think that would be a big help. There's really no excuse, especially all these stupid movie promos we see all the time. I mean, we saw Liz Carmouche pushing some movie. I mean, let's not push the movie and let's show, the referee in a locker room. I think that'd be way more interesting.
But that's sponsorship money, so I don't know how much you can take out of that. So
I know.
Yeah, so I see what you mean. One more thing to touch back on Barao. I'm not sure if you saw the UFC rankings after the day after the fight. He actually jumped 2 spots, leapfrogged 2 guys in the pound for pound rankings. He's now 4th. He leapfrogged Demetrius Johnson, who's at 5, and Chris Weidman at 6. So my question to you, is Renan Barao one of the top 4 guys pound for pound in the sport? Let me read you the list. Jones, Aldo, Velasquez, Barao.
He deserves to be up there. He's been undefeated since his first fight. I think the credentials are, account for themselves. The problem is that he fights and then number one, he's declared as kind of boring. Number 2, he's kind of uninteresting. I mean, he's not like Anderson Silva, in which he's kind of, mysterious and kind of we don't really know too much about him, and that makes him intriguing. Renan Barao is kind of like he's boring and say, he's just a champion. Also, he fights in a non-glamour division that was controlled by what people think is the real champion, that's Dominic Cruz. So that's always going to hurt him until he beats Dominic Cruz or Dominic just retires for good. I think it's always going to hurt Renan Barao. And also the other thing is that he's a small guy. And unfortunately, whether rightly or wrongly, the bigger guys are just going to get more to do. I mean, if you have John Jones, who's defeated a long list of champions ranging from the UFC and Pride, and the way he's done it by destroying them, they have Renan Barao, who's, had some good finishes, but really beaten some really talented fighters, but not champions and not legends like Shogun. I mean, the list goes down the line with who John Jones has defeated, but you get what I mean. I mean, he's defeated Machida, Forrest Griffin, just everybody, Vitor Belfort, Chael Sonnen, the list goes on, compared to Renan Barao, who's defeated really good fighters. So, to be like the glamour is off. So, just being a smaller guy, unless those guys lose, I don't see him moving up.
And then, Jay, we're going back to this list since George St. Pierre is gone. The top 5 guys that we went over, Aldo, Barao, and Johnson, it's very difficult to market these guys. And that's very scary thing for the UFC, I think, that 3 of their top 5 guys are very difficult to market. And to add to the fact, 2 of those top 5 guys don't even speak English, man.
They don't, and they just don't have the finishes. I think Jose Aldo, with his fight against Anthony Pettis, that'll be a breakthrough fight for him. But with Renan Barao, it's just difficult with that division, man. With the bantamweight and flyweight division, this takes time. Like, that's the only way it's going to do it. And I think really with the UFC, I mean, they get criticized for not creating stars, but that's why they're called stars. They're hard to create. If anybody can create a star, me and you could run an MMA promotion, man. We wouldn't be working right now. I mean, it'd be that easy to create a star and to make money, but it's hard. And so I think, UFC's just in a difficult situation. Real quickly, Jose Aldo did defeat Ricardo Lamas, unanimous decision, 49-46, 49-46, 49-46. By the numbers fight. What really struck me with Ricardo Lamas was just what he said at the post-fight press conference was basically, he just wanted to stand with Jose Aldo and not really use any game plan or strategy that his coaches suggested to him. And this just pisses me off about these fighters, man. It's like, do you want to win the fight or do you want to get the hell beaten out of you? Like, if the guy's kicking you over and over again, it's not about your pride and ego. It's about winning the fight. And it just angers me so much. And I really don't feel any sympathy for Ricardo Lamas in this fight when he said those things. The same thing with Johnny Hendricks when he said, 75% of my power went into this fight. I didn't want to knock George St. Pierre out. That's stupid. You're a moron. I'm sorry. That's just insane talk. I know I'm a fan, but that's just ridiculous. What do you think of really Lamas' performance? I thought it was kind of a D+ effort. I wasn't really that impressed. What do you think of Aldo? What are your thoughts on this fight? Pretty lackluster.
I'm disappointed that Aldo didn't take any crazy risks. He did what he had to do. Basically, what he did is he put his suit and tie on, just went in and sat at his desk and typed whatever he had to. That's what it seemed like to me. It was just work. It was just work for Aldo. This guy needs a challenge, and this Pettis fight is exactly what he needs. Just because if he's able to beat Pettis, I'd consider leapfrogging him and putting him at the number 1 pound-for-pound spot. I know that's a huge thing to say just because Jon Jones is at that number 1 spot, but
yeah, that's not happening.
I think Aldo's and his performance, his athleticism, everything he's done in the UFC and WEC, should get him some at least votes to be able to get in that number 1 position. But as far as this fight, this didn't help him. I mean, obviously it kept his record intact, but he was very technical, stayed very distant. Ricardo Lamas surprised the hell out of me just because he was able to take some of those shots to the leg. Those were some brutal shots, Jay.
Those were, yeah. I mean, he's a tough guy. I mean, he wasn't limping afterwards. So, and I know with Aldo, it looked like he was getting nailed with a baseball bat for sure. But in terms of being offensive and trying to win, I just wasn't that impressed. Overeem got a unanimous decision against Frank Mir. I understand Overeem being smart because he wants to keep his job over Frank Mir, but Frank Mir, I mean, this fight was a little bit more frustrating because Overeem had chances to finish him and he didn't do it. Weirdly enough, he called out Brock Lesnar, who's under an exclusive contract with WWE, and a guy he already beat. A pretty weird ending to a pretty boring fight with Alzo Overeem, but nevertheless, he got the victory and pretty much lines himself with a fight against Junior Dos Santos later on this year, possibly.
Yeah, no, and it'd be a pretty exciting fight to see. I mean, him calling out. I mean, I think Junior Dos Santos will defeat him just because we've seen that Overeem has a questionable chin. But just thought it was very interesting that at the end he decided to call out Brock Lesnar. That was pretty random to me. It was just I'm not sure what that was about, especially since he defeated the guy so easily.
Yeah, I don't know either. Just maybe a payday. I don't really know. But the Junior Dos Santos fight, that brings some cachet to it as well. That's pretty weird stuff. Anything you want to talk about from this card before we move on, man?
Yeah, one major thing that I guess I kind of had in the back of my mind but didn't realize it till just now.
Sure, what's up?
Uriah Faber is 0-6 in his last 6 championship fights.
Yes, yep.
Is he I know I brought it up before, but is he the Ricardo Mayorga of MMA?
Yeah, I think so. Or the Buffalo Bills of MMA, yeah.
Yeah, with regards of not his wild style. Obviously, Uriah Faber's a much better MMA fighter than Mayorga was a boxer. So
sure.
But, I mean, just because, he has a name, he has a style that people just enjoy about him, but he's unable to come up big in the biggest fights. I know he dominated the WEC for a while, but
he did.
I mean, ever since that loss to Mike Brown, he has not been able to perform, as much as he'd like in these championship fights, going, winless in those last 6. It just makes you wonder how many more title shots are in his future.
I think he'll get another one. I just think that division, especially if Aldo moves up, and if Chad Mendes, once he fights, unless Chad Mendes is the champion, he'll get a shot at the title, either featherweight or bantamweight. He's a big name. Because he wins. And really the division needs star power. And really with him, it's really hard for me criticizing Uriah Faber because I really like seeing him fight. At the same time, you take a look at his run in the WEC, the competition I don't think is as deep as it is now, especially in the featherweight division. So, I don't know. I think he's still a pretty solid fighter. I still think, a fight between him and Frankie Edgar, that's appealing. A fight between him and Dominic Cruz, easily you could put that together now. So there's still pretty big money fights for him to be put together. So let's say he fights Edgar, he fights Cruz, he fights 2 more guys and Aldo's gone. I think he's easily in line for another title shot at 145. He said it himself. He hates cutting weight to bantamweight. So I don't think he mind going back up to 145.
Off the top of your head, can you think of any other fighter in the UFC who has fought for 3 consecutive titles and not won either of them?
I can't think of any. Even Tim Sylvia, I think, was kind of 1-1 with what's his name? I'm blanking on his Andre Arlovski.
Yeah.
So I think
obviously it's not consecutive. I don't mean to say it was 3 back-to-back, but 3
opportunities at the belt.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't think I can't think of anyone. I know in boxing it's happened a few times, but the UFC, I'm not sure how much more times you'll ever see something like this with the guy get 3 title shots and go 0-3 at it.
Yeah, it's pretty rough, but I think he'll get another shot at the title. One more thing before we move on, man, and something we have to talk about. Bellator, Bellator MMA, Glory Kickboxing, the Ultimate Fighting Championship, Top Rank, and Golden Boy all have joined forces to give a combined $600,000 to the Cleveland Clinic Brain Health Study that is in its third-year operation in Las Vegas. So what I understand is that they're sampling about 400 fighters from all sports. According to Lorenzo Fertitta, the biggest sample is from the UFC to study their brains and to study kind of concussions and how they affect their daily lives. This is really a landmark historical press conference. Senators Harry Reid and John McCain were both in attendance. Of course, John Jones was in attendance. Michael Chandler. Bernard Hopkins was there. Glover Teixeira. Big names in all the sports. Just really an interesting joint venture that, all these, organizations were, are fierce rivals, but yet are coming together for this cause. Real quickly, man, what do you think about this? And do you think this could have a negative effect down the line if it comes to the conclusion that these sports are just too dangerous?
I don't know. I as far as saying these sports are too dangerous, I think they obviously are. We know they are, but yet we still watch them. As far as this, this research, it's important to see if maybe, to identify, I guess, brain damage a lot sooner. Obviously, guys have gone their entire career, 15, 20 years worth of the sport and not have any major issues. But the important thing, and the reason this is important, is to identify the guys that have issues early on that can potentially, hurt them down the road. It's going to be very hard to see guys like Meldrick Taylor, who fought Julio Cesar Chavez, and if it wasn't for Chavez knocking him out in the last 5 seconds of their fight, would have been the first guy to beat him. If you see him now or recently, it's just unbelievable. You can't understand what this guy is saying. And if this would have been caught early on, it would have saved his life and improved his life. So it's important for guys like that.
Well, it's difficult because we're really in the first generation of fighters retiring with the unified rules, right? We really can't count, let's say, a Ken Shamrock, a Royce Gracie, a Mark Coleman, a Sakuraba, the names that really paved the way in the 90s and in the early 2000s because the rules were different, right? They're completely different with Pride, with the UFC. The rules were different. Now, the rules are unified, even in Japan. It's pretty much everybody fights in a cage for the most part. Pretty much everybody's protected. The rules are mostly unified. So it's not, we'll see now with Forrest Griffin, Stephen Bonner, Rich Franklin, Chuck Liddell, George St. Pierre, Anderson Silva. These guys, when they retire for good, I think then we'll be able to see the effects on the sport on them more than, the effects on somebody like Ken Shamrock, who also did pro wrestling, Royce Gracie, who did a lot of exhibition grappling. It's kind of hard to really compare brains of mixed martial arts because really we haven't seen the first generations of mixed martial arts fighters retire yet compared to boxing, which we've seen these rules in place for years. I think it's kind of a sport-by-sport basis, and hopefully with the study, they separate it by sport and not just lumping in all these sports in together because they're not the same thing. Boxing, you have a standing A count. It's different than a Uriah Faber situation in which a fighter, might have to fight, stopped even though he's not hurt. It's completely different. If that was boxing, that would be declared, not a knockdown or it was a knockdown and Faber would be fine to continue. But in MMA, the fight stopped. That's a huge difference. And so I think with this study, hopefully there's just a separation of what sport, the consequences of each sport with these concussion impacts.
For them not to do this type of research or to team up, I think it's a disservice to all the guys in the sport. So I'm glad that research like this is taking place because it's important to identify it in these guys that can potentially, if you can save a guy's life or prolong it 10, 15 years or even 5 years, man, that's completely worth it, I feel.
Absolutely. And I think it also comes down to the trainers in the gym, somebody, getting knocked out in the gym, following the procedures to make sure that they don't fight again and making sure that they uphold to the rules instead of putting them in, in training the next day, even though they taught the coach into it. So hopefully, with this study, we'll see the training methods change also. Yeah. I think that's going to wrap up our show, man. Anything else you wanted to add before we say goodbye for this week?
One more thing, and it's super quick.
Sure.
Did you see the awkward encounter between Jon Jones and GSP outside of a club?
I did not, no.
Oh, okay. I'll have to send it to you. We'll post it on the Low Blow site as well. I mean, it's not like the guys got into it, but, I mean, Jon Jones kind of made it seem like he forced himself to be happy to see GSP at the same club. It's really weird, man. Really? That's at least what it seems like. And one more thing that I'm, don't know whether to be happy about or sad about because it makes me feel old, but Mikro Krokop and Remy Bonjasky are about a month away from fighting each other at the Glory 14. So, yeah. I mean, that's a fight that I'm excited about just because the rematch is 11 years in the making. I remember the first time these two guys fought, and it was one of the fights I was most pumped about. So, just a couple of things that are on my radar.
Glory's been on a roll, and that's going to be a fantastic card. I think there's even going to be the light heavyweight tournament on that card. Tyro Spong's supposed to fight on that card, too. That's going to be a fantastic night of fights. Glory's been killing it. And it could be, if they have more shows, it wouldn't surprise me if they're promotion of the year, honestly. They've just been on fire.
I definitely agree with you, man. But no, that just made me feel old when I realized they were fighting.
Yeah, man. The old guy's still at it, no doubt.
Yeah.
Again, you can get in touch with Fight Fans Radio through Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Spreaker. We're also on Facebook. We're also on Twitter through @TheLowBlow. Also, follow all our videos, including some videos and some audio for Black History Month on YouTube.com/LowBlow505. We're also available, of course, on the Stitcher Radio app, on Spreaker, on iTunes, and on Podomatic. All those have apps, so go download them now. So for Jorge Hernandez, I'm Justin Goodrum. You've been listening to episode 178 of The Low Blow on Fight Fans Radio, SouthwestFight.com, and USCombatSports.com. We will see you next week.
Peace.